The Fix is In is a great Frasier episode, though there's one thing where I'm not sure how I feel about it, and I will discuss that in more detail. This is the ninth episode of the first season. It's directed by Victor Gonzalez, and this is the penultimate episode of the reboot, which is slightly devastating because, as I've mentioned previously, I had hoped for a decent amount of cameos, including Cheers cameos. And there is at least one more confirmed cameo, which presumably is in the next and final episode. So unless the next episode is a cameo bonanza, I'm not getting as many as I would have wanted. But we'll see in time within the next week when the next episode drops what that is like. But for now, I'm going to be discussing the fixes in, and there will be spoilers for this episode as I go through things mostly chronologically. And it starts off with Freddy and his date entering the apartment, and the date finds out that Freddy lives with his father. And Frasier comes home, and Freddy has kind of pretended that Frasier is unable to look after himself, and that's why his father lives with him. And it felt a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. It's like they were slightly making fun of people with dementia or other conditions like that. But then things went in a better direction, and I stopped feeling like that. But then towards the end, I felt that again. But I will talk about that when we get there chronologically. But it was not my favorite beginning to an episode. Then we get in with the scene with David, who is following the TA handbook to the letter to help Alan. And one of my favorite moments, it's so brief, but it's the moment where David, Frasier, and Alan are in Frasier and Alan's office, and Olivia sticks her head around the door with an ice cream, the most immaculate looking ice cream ever. It was a little ice cream with a cherry on the top, if I remember, and she just popped her head around, and it was just a fabulous couple of seconds, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And David gave a really interesting little speech in this later on in the episode about feeling needed. And this is what the whole episode is about, of course, with Freddy, which I'll get back to in a moment. And how even though Alan was giving him such ridiculous tasks like separating Lucky Charms, first of all, who doesn't like the marshmallows and Lucky Charms? And giving his cat eye drops. But David had been coddled his whole life, his whole childhood. So he was finally being given responsibilities. And it was something he actually enjoyed and appreciated. And that's not something I saw until David said it. So that's something that I really appreciated and thought was really eye-opening. And then we have the same concept with Freddy, in that Freddy doesn't feel needed because Frasier does everything for him. And the whole episode is about Frasier not letting Freddy do anything. And of course, Freddy starts to basically pull the house apart as he tries to find the source of this leak. And Frasier has to learn that eventually Freddy needs to be able to take responsibility for himself in some ways, because as humans, we need to feel needed. We need to feel useful and like we're contributing something. And yeah, it's great to look after your son, and Frasier's obviously doing a great thing, cooking for him, not asking him to pay for many bills or anything. That's really kind and generous. But there has to be a halfway point where the individual feels needed and wanted and useful. And I think that's really thought-provoking and something that a lot of us can do well to remember, both in terms of if we don't feel wanted, that's a normal human response to not feeling wanted. That's perfectly acceptable because most people have a need to feel needed. But also, if you are somebody who is doing everything for somebody, even if they haven't asked for it, maybe step back a bit and see how they actually feel about it, because they might not be as appreciative as you think. So I liked that a lot. I thought it was a really great message. We had a really great heart-to-heart between Frasier and Freddy, and it got emotional. I had tears prickling in my eyes in the scene. It's the scene when Frasier is talking about his father and how he was eventually happy to do everything for his father because Martin had always been there for him. So it was his chance to be there for Martin. And it's just, it breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. And also Frasier feeling like he wasn't always there for Freddy, which is fair enough, but he did live in a different state for most of Freddy's life. So it was a very moving speech and definitely very eye-opening as well. And I feel like most of this season of Frasier has been about Freddy's relationship with his father, and I'm okay with that. But I do think maybe some people might find that it's getting a little bit stale. For example, if this was a full 20 something episode season and this continued for the full duration, it might start to get a bit stale from my perspective. But up until this point, I think they've explored various different angles of this father son relationship, and I think they've done a really good job with it. And it's very relatable, even if you're not in the father son relationship. And that's something that I think is definitely worthy of a lot of praise. And the episode's got a lot of great moments in it. Also, there are two bits that I loved. The first is Roland. Andy Daly plays Roland the plumber. Trying not to laugh as I just repicture the entire scene. Roland the plumber, when he started to pretend to be the Harvard professor, it was just fabulous. And I agree. It was a brilliant bit of improv. He did a fantastic job and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I genuinely thought he was going to get away with it. But Freddy's a little bit too clever to not see past that. But I enjoyed that a lot. And I also realised I like Eve. And I don't think this is the first episode where I've liked her, but it's the first episode where I've become very aware of that. I mentioned in my earlier episode discussions that I didn't really care for her. I never disliked her. I just failed to see what value she brought to the show, what the point of the character was. But in this episode, I really liked her. And that realization dawned on me when she picked up the bat and ran through to Frasier's apartment. And I just thought that's brave. That's such a well, I was going to say I don't think lovely is the right word, but that's an incredible thing to do. Somebody was in danger, and the first thing she did was rush to Frasier's rescue with a baseball bat. And that's incredible. Not no, I think most people would probably freeze first. Well, maybe that's just me. I don't know, but that's the moment when I realised, yeah, I like you. And then I was able to reflect back and see other moments where I've actually enjoyed the character and what she's brought into it. Not from the beginning, absolutely not. It has taken a good few episodes for me to see value in the character, but by this point, I really appreciate her being in the show. Really brilliant episode. Funny, emotional, thought provoking. My only complaint is the lack of cameos, and I am slightly heartbroken. So I am hoping the next and final episode has some Cheers cameos. Just give me Norm or Sam or Carla or anybody. To be honest, I'm not hopeful because I feel like that information would have been leaked by now. Somebody would have seen one of the Cheers cast going into the studio and that information would have been leaked. I doubt it's going to happen. We do have one other confirmed cameo. I won't say who it is, just in case you're unaware. But I mean, that's a great one, and I'm happy about that. And it is a Frasier cameo rather than a Cheers cameo. But you can't move Frasier back to Boston and not have Cheers in it. So we'll see. But either way, cameos or not, this has been an amazing season. I was very, very nervous about the reboot because it could have gone either way. It could have ruined something that was perfect, or it could have been an absolute treat. And 9 out of 10 episodes have so far been enjoyable. Let's hope the last one is just as good as The Fix Is In and all the others. Oh, I just realised I forgot to circle back to the whole dementia thing. This is something I was going to say and then completely forgot. As I said, I felt uncomfortable in the beginning with them kind of seemingly not necessarily making fun of dementia, but I felt like they weren't treating it as sensitively as they could have done. But then I got over that. It seemed fine. But the final scene or penultimate scene where Frasier pretended to not be fully in control of his mind, and talking into the banana and things. I feel like it was maybe a step too far, and I didn't like it. I thought it was very uncomfortable, and I didn't. I see what Frasier was doing. He was trying to, score brownie points with Freddy because he'd hurt Freddy's feelings, and now he was trying to give Freddy a chance with this woman. And yeah, that's a nice thing to do, but I just feel like it was a step too far, slightly making fun of people with dementia or other conditions that cause similar behaviors. So I didn't love that. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive to it. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. but my gut feeling was I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with this. It was okay in the beginning, they only slightly touched upon it, but then I think they went too far. But other than that, loved the episode. But yeah, that bit just, it didn't sit right with me at all.